Hello, I'm Donna Pido. I'm one of three authors on this presentation. The other two are Martin Khamala and Odoch Pido. And we would like to introduce what we think is a new concept in design education. And that's the concept of what we're calling the new 3 R's: range, repertoire, and resilience. Now, here's no. We discovered that many people in Eastern and Southern Africa don't know that there is a history to the 3 R's. The first ones in the early 20th century, as early as 1907 that we've been able to discover, were reading, writing, and arithmetic. And I've given you the words of a song, school days, dear old golden rule days. Reading, writing, and arithmetic taught to the tune of the hickory stick, which is a switch. The hickory plant grows in North America, and it has been used for corporal punishment in schools for many decades. Now it's extinct, however. In the late 20th century, people became very environmentally conscious and began paying attention to our environment. And so the next incarnation of the 3 R's is reuse, repurpose, and recycle, arising from grave concerns about sustainability and pollution. The new 3 R's are range, repertoire, and resilience. We have come up with this idea without grounding in any theoretical framework and without reference to anyone else's research. So if you want to ask us about our methodology, it's ideation. We think about it and we come up with ideas. So range, repertoire, and resilience are the new 3 R's according to us. Range means all of the materials, technologies, and processes, from the simplest to the more complex, plus the ancient to the most recent materials, tools, and processes that are accessible, available, existing for whatever it is we're trying to design. Repertoire refers to the skills, the materials, the technologies, et cetera, that any individual designer possesses, is aware of, or is highly skilled at. So within each range, we look to the development of the broadest possible skills. This means acquiring and transmitting as many skills as possible to our students while avoiding general loss of skills, which, as you all know, is a problem in Eastern and Southern Africa. By resilience, we mean the ability to pivot quickly and tightly when circumstances change. We must be able to change and/or mobilize alternatives and move forward effectively. An example is in my sitting room at home, where I have a very high-class Brother digital sewing machine that practically talks to me. But when my power goes off in the house, I take 2 steps over to my treadle-powered Singer and keep sewing. It's that is what we mean by resilience, being able to take change and upheaval in stride. Now we're looking at the context. We're in the 21st century, almost reluctantly, and we have unprecedented access to information from all cultures at all times, not just in books as we used to do it, but online. The internet has given us total access to everybody. I'm a stitcher, and I can talk to stitchers in Peru and in Zimbabwe and also in New Zealand anytime I want. So we're looking at the concept, the flood of information and the enormous access that we have to information and videos showing us how to do it. And we're trying to connect that with the so-called fourth industrial revolution. It is emerging from the third industrial revolution, whatever that was, and is considered to be more advanced. And I put that in quotes because nothing is really advanced, and widespread because of the frenzy of its development and disruptiveness of its technologies. We're looking also at the emergence of e-learning, and I think we've all learned since the beginning of COVID-19 that e-learning is not the easy solution that we thought it would be. Our evolving online instruction and expanding artificial intelligence. And with all of that, our new guidelines will be needed for digital pedagogy. So some have called the old models of teaching anthropocentric humanism and the new kind digital education. We're calling that critical post-humanism. Digital education is more than a technical concern. It changes the dynamics of space and creates new types of learning cultures. I think we've all learned that in some ways the hard way by trying to relate to our students online as we did before the lockdown due to COVID-19. We're also concerned about interdisciplinary anomalies that placed emphasis on so-called high tech in design and education. We in Kenya are also looking at the anomalies of access by ordinary people and the possibilities for the future that may, sadly, include the collapse of global and local supply chains. We note with horror that we face a generation of students who do not know that their grandparents grew up without shoes and who also do not know how to make footwear for themselves. We also see highly motivated students constrained by outdated gender divisions of labor, particularly young men who want to stitch things and have no idea how to do it. So let's talk about the challenge. It's a complex challenge. We must meet the challenge of a digital age cluttered with the internet of things, robotics, virtual and augmented reality, and artificial intelligence. We don't really yet know how to use all of these new goodies, but we're finding out. And we must but while we're doing that, we must keep hold of, maintain, and mine the technologies of our global cultures. This is particularly true in Africa, where we're in danger of losing so much just by thinking that we're modernizing or moving forward. Skills lost now may never be recovered. Skills have already been lost that I witnessed in Kenya 50 years ago, and nobody knows how to do those things now. We design educators must redesign our own pedagogies and influence other academic disciplines by using our full array of technologies, from simple blades to scissors to laser beams, from chalk and talk to virtual and augmented realities, from building clay pots to printing out crockery in 3D. Africans are uniquely challenged to decolonize our curricula and pedagogy while keeping up with the accelerating pace of technological change. And of course, I needn't add that COVID-19 has put a hole in everything for us and forced us all to change more quickly than we were prepared to, or that we thought we would have to. So now we're looking at the way forward, and it's complicated and challenging, but we can do it. Humanism, we have to bear in mind that humanism is inseparable from design education, and a new 4IR, Fourth Industrial Revolution curriculum may be needed to narrow the gap between the humanities and the science, technology, engineering, and math, the STEM subjects that seem to think they're better than everybody else, to create a more integrated system, including discussions of autonomy and social determinism. We have to take it all into account. As it stands now, at least in Kenya, the hard scientists don't want to be bothered with us humanists. I'm an anthropologist, and I resent that rather bitterly. As the Fourth Industrial Revolution develops, educators must rethink education and how to prepare the next generation for all the opportunities that they face. Design practitioners will face new demands, and digital literacy will be a requisite skill. Design programs in Africa to date have not really kept up with the movement toward digital learning and digital technologies of the third industrial age. It is against this that we now contend that the time is ripe for a new kind of design thinking, in big capital letters. The new approach would be to educate students on a range of technologies, establishing a sufficient repertoire of skills to build resilience. I can see that still considering the way forward, we must look at transdisciplinarity. That means we have to make friends with our hard science colleagues, and we would like them to make friends with us instead of just dismissing us. We now need to transcend disciplinary boundaries and exhibit our greatest potential to respond to new imperatives, not the least of which is pandemics and global warming and too much garbage and floods and rains and droughts. We need to educate and re-educate our students and our faculty. We must be developing our faculty to adjust appropriately to the new e-learning strategies, the non-face-to-face, non-physical contact with students. And we must consider that no matter what we do, we go back to Shakespeare and remember that the best laid plans of mice and men always fail. We must take this into account and be ready. This is part of our resilience. Be ready for whatever may come our way. We contend that in Eastern and Southern Africa, design approaches and approaches to learning should be indigenized. Now, whether that means marshaling or mobilizing pre-colonial pedagogies and methods of design, or whether it means that we need to fully adopt the exotic design paradigms and approaches to teaching that were forced on African peoples starting in the 1600s. We need to be thinking and talking about it. This is already going on in South Africa, and it's happening in Kenya, but to a limited extent. We need to build resilience and effectively navigate the future of work for our students. So thinking Afrocentrically and decolonially, we must acknowledge that the very first industrial revolution happened when our remote ancestors in East and Southern Africa learned how to make and control fire. That was the first industrial revolution. Many centuries later, they extended their cutting edge beyond their teeth, out of their mouths and into their hands by banging rocks together to create stone tools. That was the second industrial revolution. Yet another revolutionary innovation that astronomically increased our chances of survival as individuals and a species. So why are we counting from the late 1700s, starting with that first industrial revolution, when in Africa there had already been 1.2 million years earlier? We live where it happened. So why are we still thinking Eurocentrically? As we face the so-called fourth industrial revolution head on, design educators in Africa should be standing our cultural ground and insisting on recognition of the blatant fact that there were two industrial revolutions in Eastern and Southern Africa, many millennia before the 1 to 4 that are recognized in our post-colonial world. I don't want to include this slide because I'm not interested in explaining my methodology, but let me do it anyway, and I hope that you'll chop it off at the end. This article is not based on a single finite bounded quote unquote research exercise, but rather on bits and pieces of data gathered primarily through reading, experiment, and participant observation over more than 5 decades for the 3 of us. The author's cumulative experience in research, teaching, professional practice, and life over all those decades has provided us with a pool of data to cherry pick in making our points. If we must name our research design, it is bricolage, a French word meaning the process of bringing apparently disparate things together to form a cohesive whole. Don't ask us for our sample size or our sampling techniques, please.